My sister-in-law spent years treating me like garbage at every family gathering, laughing as she flaunted her designer bags while I struggled to make ends meet. But when my mother-in-law passed away last month, everything changed. The lawyer called my name to read the will, not hers. Want to know why a woman who barely knew me left me her entire fortune while cutting out her own daughter-in-law? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The first time I met Victoria Ashford, she looked me up and down like I was something stuck to the bottom of her $1,000 heels. It was Thanksgiving 2019, and my husband Nathan had insisted we drive 6 hours from our cramped apartment in Toledo to his family's estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'd spent 3 days preparing a homemade pecan pie, the only thing I could afford to contribute, while Victoria apparently had her desserts catered from some French patisserie in Manhattan. "Oh, how quaint," she said, holding my pie container at arm's length like it might contaminate her. "Nathan, your wife actually baked, with her own hands. How very rustic." Nathan squeezed my shoulder, but said nothing. That should have been my first warning sign. Victoria was married to Nathan's older brother, Christopher, a hedge fund manager who worked 80-hour weeks and barely seemed to notice his wife's existence. But Victoria noticed everything. She noticed my off-brand jeans. She noticed my 5-year-old Honda Civic parked between their matching Tesla and Range Rover. She noticed that I did my own nails while hers were professionally done every week. The Ashford family dinner was held in a dining room larger than my entire apartment. Crystal chandeliers, oil paintings that were probably worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. And at the head of the table sat Eleanor Ashford, Nathan and Christopher's mother, a quiet woman in her early 70s who observed everything with sharp, intelligent eyes but rarely spoke. "So, Melissa," Victoria said halfway through dinner, swirling her wine glass. "Nathan tells us you're still working at that little dental office, as a receptionist, right?" The way she said receptionist made it sound like I cleaned sewers for a living. "I'm actually the office manager now," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I handle all the scheduling, billing, and insurance claims for Dr. Patterson's practice." "Oh, how impressive," Victoria cooed, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Christopher just closed a deal worth $40 million last week, but I'm sure scheduling dental appointments is equally fulfilling." I felt my cheeks burn. Nathan stared at his plate. Christopher checked his phone, but Eleanor looked directly at me, and something in her expression softened. "Melissa," Eleanor said quietly, "I understand you put yourself through college while working full-time. That takes considerable strength." I nodded, surprised she knew that detail. "Yes, ma'am. It took me 6 years, but I finished." "No family money to help?" Victoria interjected with mock sympathy. "That must have been so difficult. Some of us are fortunate enough to have had easier paths." What Victoria didn't mention was that she'd never worked a day in her life. She'd married Christopher straight out of her liberal arts degree from Vassar and had been living off the Ashford family wealth ever since. The evening deteriorated from there. Victoria made sure to mention her recent vacation to Bali, her personal trainer, her upcoming charity gala where tickets were only $5,000 each. Every comment was a calculated reminder of the chasm between us. But the worst came. After dinner, when the family gathered in the sitting room. "Oh, Melissa," Victoria suddenly announced to everyone, "I almost forgot to ask, are you and Nathan planning to have children? Or is that financially challenging right now?" The room went silent. Nathan and I had been trying for 2 years. We'd just found out I'd miscarried for the second time 3 weeks earlier. Nathan had told his family we weren't ready yet, to save me the pain of explaining. "We're focusing on our careers right now," I managed to say. Victoria's eyes glittered with something cruel. "Of course. I imagine children are quite expensive when you're on a receptionist's salary. Christopher and I are waiting too. We want to make sure we can provide the very best for our future children. Private schools, summer homes, trust funds. You know, the things every child deserves. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried silently for 10 minutes. When I emerged, Eleanor was waiting in the hallway. She handed me a tissue without a word, then touched my arm gently. My daughter-in-law forgets that cruelty is not the same as class, she said softly, and money is not the same as worth. Those were the only words Eleanor spoke to me that night, but they lodged themselves in my heart. The drive home was silent. Nathan finally spoke when we were an hour outside Greenwich. "Victoria can be a bit much," he said weakly. "A bit much?" I turned to stare at him. "She humiliated me for 6 straight hours and you said nothing." "She's Christopher's wife. It's complicated. Family dynamics." "I'm your family," I interrupted. "I'm your wife, and you let her treat me like garbage." Nathan had no answer for that. Over the next 3 years, the pattern repeated itself. Every holiday, every birthday celebration, every family gathering. Victoria found new and creative ways to remind me that I didn't belong in the Ashford family. She, accidentally, scheduled a family trip to Martha's Vineyard during a week she knew I couldn't get off work. She threw a designer handbag party where everyone was supposed to bring their favorite luxury bag, knowing full well my entire purse collection came from Target. She even forgot to include me in the family photo at Christmas 2021, saying there wasn't enough room in the frame. Eleanor was always there, watching. She never participated in Victoria's games, but she never stopped them either. She remained a quiet, observing presence, polite to me but distant. I started to dread every family obligation. My stomach would twist into knots for days before each gathering. Nathan and I fought constantly about it. He kept asking me to just ignore her or not let her get to me, but he never confronted Victoria, never defended me. His silence felt like an endorsement. By early 2023, I'd become a ghost at these gatherings. I'd arrive, stay quiet, endure Victoria's barbs, and leave as quickly as possible. I stopped trying to contribute, stopped trying to fit in. I was just counting down the hours until I could escape. Then, in March 2023, Eleanor fell ill. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Victoria immediately transformed into the devoted daughter-in-law, visiting Eleanor daily, posting heartfelt messages on social media about cherishing every moment with beloved family. She organized a meal train, coordinated with hospice, and made sure everyone knew how much she was sacrificing to care for her mother-in-law. I sent flowers and a card. I offered to help. Eleanor's assistant thanked me politely and said everything was handled. Eleanor passed away on a Tuesday morning in June. She was 74 years old. The funeral was elegant and understated. Exactly what Eleanor would have wanted. Victoria wore designer black and wept dramatically at the service. I stood in the back, feeling like an intruder even at a funeral. What I didn't know was that everything was about to change. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The reading of the will was scheduled for exactly 1 week after the funeral. I was organizing patient files at Dr. Patterson's office when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mrs. Melissa Ashford? A professional, measured voice. Yes, this is her. My name is Richard Thornton. I'm the attorney handling Eleanor Ashford's estate. I need you to attend the reading of her will this Friday at 2 o'clock at our offices in Hartford. The address is... I'm sorry, I interrupted, confusion flooding through me. There must be some mistake. I'm sure this is just for the immediate family. There's no mistake, Mrs. Ashford. Your presence is specifically required. Eleanor left explicit instructions that you must be present. My mind raced. Required? Why would Eleanor require me to be there? Can you tell me why I need to... All will be explained at the reading. I'll email you the details. Friday, 2 o'clock sharp. Please don't be late. He hung up before I could ask anything else. That evening, Nathan was equally baffled. Mom barely spoke to you, he said, not unkindly, just stating what we both knew was true. Maybe she left you some jewelry or something sentimental? She did that for Christopher's ex-girlfriend once, gave her a bracelet after they broke up. I couldn't shake the strange feeling in my gut. Eleanor had always been kind to me in that distant, polite way. But required attendance? That seemed excessive for a bracelet. Friday arrived with unseasonably cold rain. I'd requested the afternoon off, telling Dr. Patterson it was family business. I changed in the office bathroom from my usual work clothes into the only professional dress I owned, a navy blue number I'd bought on clearance 3 years ago for job interviews. The law offices of Thornton and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a glass building in downtown Hartford. Everything screamed old money: mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, oriental rugs that probably cost more than my car. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where the Ashford family was already assembled. Christopher sat at the far end of the table, his expression unreadable behind designer glasses. Nathan took the seat beside him, giving me an encouraging nod. And Victoria. Victoria was positioned directly across from the attorney's empty chair, clearly expecting to be the focal point of whatever was about to happen. She looked me over with barely concealed disdain. Melissa. What a surprise. I didn't realize Eleanor had mentioned you in her will. Neither did I admitted, taking a seat near the door. Well, she probably left you something small. A keepsake. Eleanor was always thoughtful like that, even with peripheral family members. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Richard Thornton entered precisely at 2 o'clock, carrying a leather portfolio and a sealed envelope. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades navigating wealthy families and their complicated legacies. Thank you all for coming, he began, settling into his chair. I'll be reading Eleanor Ashford's last will and testament, which was updated on March 15th of this year. Just before her diagnosis, Victoria leaned forward, her perfectly manicured hands folded on the table. She'd been posting about Eleanor's generous spirit and lasting legacy all week on social media. Thornton opened the portfolio and began with the standard legal language: declarations of sound mind, revocations of previous wills. Then he got to the specific bequests. To my son Christopher Ashford, I leave my shares in Ashford Industries, my property in Cape Cod, and the contents of my personal art collection, with an estimated total value of $8 million. Christopher nodded, unsurprised. He'd probably been expecting this his entire life. To my son Nathan Ashford, I leave my property in Lake George, my investment portfolio with Berkshire Capital, and my vintage automobile collection, with an estimated total value of $7.5 million. Nathan's eyes widened slightly. I reached under the table and squeezed his hand. This would change everything for us. Victoria was practically vibrating with anticipation. Even though the will wasn't leaving her anything directly, it wouldn't. She wasn't a blood family. She clearly expected her husband's inheritance would benefit her enormously. Thornton cleared his throat. To my daughter-in-law, Victoria Ashford, I leave my pearl necklace set and matching earrings purchased in 1975, with an estimated value of $12,000. The room went silent. Victoria's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then barely contained rage. I'm sorry, what? The pearl set, Thornton repeated calmly. Eleanor specified that these were purchased during her first trip to Japan and hold sentimental value. Sentimental value, Victoria repeated slowly. That's it? After everything I did, the care, the visits, the coordination, I got a $12,000 pearl necklace? Yes, Mrs. Ashford. I felt uncomfortable witnessing this, like I'd intruded on a private humiliation. I started to stand, figuring my part in this was done. Please remain seated, Mrs. Melissa Ashford, Thornton said firmly. We're not finished. I froze, half out of my chair, then slowly sat back down. Victoria's eyes locked onto me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Thornton turned a page. Now we come to the primary estate, Eleanor's main residence in Greenwich. Connecticut, her remaining investment accounts, her business interests in 4 commercial properties, and her liquid assets amount to approximately $42 million. My brain couldn't even process that number. $42 million. It was abstract, incomprehensible. Eleanor left very specific instructions regarding this portion of her estate. Thornton pulled out a separate letter. Eleanor's personal stationery visible even from where I sat. She wanted me to read this aloud. He adjusted his glasses and began. I have watched my family carefully over these past years. I have seen who shows kindness when nothing is to be gained. I have seen who has character when no one is watching. I have seen who treats others with dignity regardless of their bank account. And I have seen someone who wields cruelty like a weapon. Victoria's face had gone pale. Thornton continued reading Eleanor's words. Money reveals who people truly are. It doesn't change them. It amplifies what was already there. I have 2 daughters-in-law. One married my son for love and built a life through hard work and sacrifice. The other married my son for status and has spent years using my family's wealth as a cudgel against those she deems beneath her. I felt lightheaded. This couldn't be going where I thought it was going. Therefore, Thornton read, I leave the remainder of my estate, my home, my investments, my properties, and all associated assets, totaling approximately $42 million, to Melissa Catherine Ashford. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Nathan's hand went slack in mine. Christopher sat forward, his mouth opening and closing without sound. And Victoria. Victoria looked like she'd been struck by lightning. What? The word exploded from her. That's impossible. That's insane. She barely knew Melissa. They hardly spoke. This is a mistake. There is no mistake, Thornton said firmly. Eleanor was of completely sound mind when she made these decisions. She had a full psychological evaluation conducted to ensure there could be no challenges to her competency. I have the documentation right here, but Victoria stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I spent months taking care of her. I organized everything. I was there. And she leaves everything to someone who sent flowers? Eleanor's decisions were her own, Thornton said, and they are legally binding. Victoria's eyes found mine across the table, and the look in them was pure venom. You must have manipulated her somehow. Poisoned her against me. I barely saw her, I managed to say, my voice shaking. I don't understand this either. There's one more thing, Thornton said, pulling out another envelope. Eleanor left a personal letter for Mrs. Melissa Ashford. She requested it be given to you after the reading. He slid the cream-colored envelope across the table to me. My name was written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked it up. This is absurd. Victoria's voice was climbing toward hysteria. Christopher, say something. This is your mother. Your inheritance? You can't just let this nobody walk away with everything. Christopher finally found his voice. Mr. Thornton, surely there are grounds to contest this. My mother must have been under undue influence, or perhaps the medication affected her judgment. Your mother anticipated every legal challenge, Thornton interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. She underwent 2 separate psychiatric evaluations. She consulted with 3 different attorneys. She documented her reasoning extensively. This will be airtight. Any contest will fail and only deplete the estate with legal fees. I stared at the envelope in my hands, Eleanor's handwriting blurring as tears filled my eyes. None of this made sense. $42 million, a house in Greenwich, properties I didn't even know existed. Read it, Victoria demanded, pointing at the letter. Read it out loud. I want to know what lies she told you. That's private, Thornton said sharply. Eleanor meant it for Melissa alone. I have a right to know why I was cut out of my own mother-in-law's will. Victoria's composure had completely shattered. Her face was flushed, her carefully styled hair coming loose from its clip. Nathan touched my arm gently. Mel, maybe we should go. Read it somewhere private. But something in me had shifted. I'd spent 4 years being silent while Victoria humiliated me. 4 years of taking her abuse, of shrinking myself, of pretending her cruelty didn't cut deep. Eleanor had seen it. Eleanor had known, and Eleanor had made a choice. "No," I said quietly. "I'll read it here." Thornton nodded approval. Victoria crossed her arms, her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. My hands shook as I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Eleanor's elegant script covered 2 pages of her personal stationery. I began reading aloud. "Dear Melissa, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably very confused. I imagine my sons are surprised, and I imagine Victoria is furious. Let me explain. I've been wealthy my entire adult life. My late husband built Ashford Industries from nothing, and when he died, he left me more money than most people can fathom. For 50 years, I've watched what money does to people, how it corrupts, how it reveals their true character. My sons are good men, but they were raised in privilege. They've never known struggle. I've left them well provided for, but not so much that they forget the value of their own work. Victoria married my son Christopher 5 years ago. From the beginning, I watched her carefully. I've seen women marry for money before, I'm not naive. But Victoria revealed herself to be something crueler than a gold digger. She is a woman who derives pleasure from making others feel small." I paused, my throat tight. Victoria's face had gone from red to white. I continued. "I watched her humiliate you at every family gathering. The comments about your clothes, your car, your job, your inability to afford children. Each barb was calculated to remind you that you didn't belong. And I watched my son Nathan say nothing. Do nothing. Allow it to happen. That told me something important about the men I raised. They are comfortable, complicit. They've never had to stand up for anything because they've never had to struggle for anything. But you, Melissa, I watched you absorb every insult with grace. I watched you continue to show up, to be kind, to try. I watched you bring homemade pie to Thanksgiving when you couldn't afford to buy your dignity. I watched you work full-time while putting yourself through college. I watched you comfort my son through his career struggles, even when he wouldn't comfort you through your losses. I had my assistant do research. I know about miscarriages. I know Nathan told you not to burden the family with your grief. I know you cried in my bathroom and thought no one noticed. I noticed everything. When I was diagnosed, Victoria suddenly became a devoted daughter-in-law. She posted about it on social media. She coordinated care. She performed grief and devotion beautifully. But I saw through it. She was securing her inheritance, making sure everyone knew how much she'd sacrificed. You sent flowers and a card. You offered help once and didn't push when told everything was handled. You gave me the gift of not being a burden, of not performing your concern for an audience. That's the difference between you and Victoria. You have actual character. She has a performance. So I'm leaving you my fortune, Melissa. Not because you're perfect, not because you're family, but because I believe you'll use it wisely. You understand what it means to have nothing, so you'll respect having something. You know suffering, so you'll have compassion. You've been humbled, so you won't humiliate others. This money is not a reward. It's a responsibility. Use it well. Use it to build the life you deserve. Use it to prove that kindness and character matter more than cruelty and status. And Melissa, leave my son if you need to. This money gives you freedom. Don't stay in a marriage where you're not cherished simply because you can't afford to leave. If Nathan proves himself worthy of you, wonderful. If not, you now have the means to walk away. As for Victoria, I'm leaving her pearls. Not because she deserves them, but because I want her to understand that all her performance, all her cruelty, all her social climbing meant nothing to me. She married in Ashford and thought that made her somebody. Let the pearls remind her that character cannot be purchased or married into. You were kind to me when you had nothing to gain. That's worth more than $42 million. But I'm giving you $42 million anyway. Live well, Melissa. And don't let anyone make you feel small ever again. With respect and hope, Eleanor Ashford. Silence filled the conference room like a physical weight. I carefully refolded the letter, my vision blurred with tears. Eleanor had seen me. Really see me. This quiet woman I'd barely known had understood everything. Victoria made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. This is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. 4 years of dealing with your pathetic poor little me act, and you manipulate a dying woman. Enough! Christopher's voice cracked like a whip. Victoria, stop talking! But Christopher, I said enough. He stood, his face carefully blank. Mr. Thornton, thank you for your time. Please send us the documentation regarding our individual inheritances. I assume there will be paperwork to sign, Thornton nodded. I'll have my assistant coordinate everything. Christopher looked at me then, really looked at me, for perhaps the first time in 4 years. Melissa, my mother clearly thought very carefully about this. I won't contest her wishes. He walked out without another word. Victoria scrambled after him, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. Christopher, wait. We need to discuss this. We can fight this. Your mother wasn't in her right mind. Their voices faded down the hallway. Nathan hadn't moved. He sat perfectly still, staring at the table. Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Ashford, Thornton said carefully. I'll need to meet with you both separately to discuss the transfer of assets. Melissa, you'll need to establish some new bank accounts, meet with financial advisors, and handle the property transfers. This is a significant undertaking. I don't want it, I whispered. Both men looked at me. I don't want any of it. It doesn't feel right. I barely knew her. This should go to her sons. Eleanor knew exactly what she was doing, Thornton said firmly. And she knew you'd probably say that. Which is why she wrote this in her will. He flipped to a page and read, If Melissa attempts to refuse this inheritance or give it away to my sons, she is required to first spend 30 days considering what this money could mean for her life. 30 days before making any decisions. I'm not asking her to keep it. I'm asking her to truly consider it. He closed the file. So you have 30 days, Melissa. Use them. Nathan finally spoke, his voice strange and distant. $42 million. Yes, I said quietly. My mother left you $42 million. Nathan, he stood abruptly. I need some air. I'll meet you at the car. He walked out, leaving me alone with Thornton. The attorney gathered his papers, then paused. For what it's worth, Mrs. Ashford, I've been practicing estate law for 37 years. I've seen dozens of wealthy people make decisions about their legacies. Eleanor was the most clear-headed client I've ever had. She knew exactly what she was doing and why. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for accepting a gift you didn't ask for but clearly deserve. He handed me his card. Call me Monday. We have a lot of work to do. I walked out of that conference room in a daze, clutching Eleanor's letter like a lifeline, stepping into a future I couldn't even begin to imagine. The drive back to Toledo was the longest 6 hours of my life. Nathan gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. For the first hour, neither of us spoke. Rain hammered against the windshield, the rhythm almost hypnotic. I kept Eleanor's letter folded in my purse, her words echoing in my mind. Leave my son if you need to. Finally, somewhere past Albany, Nathan broke the silence. I don't understand. Why you? It wasn't accusatory. Just bewildered. I don't know, I said honestly. I barely knew her. But she knew you. Nathan's voice was hollow. She watched us, watch me, and apparently found me wanting. I didn't know what to say to that, because Eleanor's letter had made it clear. She'd seen Nathan's silence as complicity. And she wasn't wrong. $7.5 million, Nathan continued, his voice strange. My mother left me $7.5 million. That's generational wealth. That's everything we needed. And it feels like nothing compared to what she left you. Nathan, I'm not angry at you, he said quickly. I'm just trying to understand. She was my mother. I loved her, and she clearly thought I failed some test I didn't even know I was taking. We drove another hour in silence. My phone buzzed repeatedly, ignored calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading fast. When we finally pulled into our apartment complex after midnight, Nathan turned off the engine but didn't get out. What are you going to do? I don't know. Thornton said I have 30 days to decide. Decide what? Should I keep it? Nathan looked at me in the darkness. Mel, that's $42 million. You can't just give that away. It doesn't feel like mine, but it is. My mother made sure of that. He rubbed his face tiredly. I need to sleep. We'll figure this out tomorrow. But tomorrow brought no clarity. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I couldn't face people's questions. Couldn't pretend to be normal when my entire world had shifted on its axis. By Sunday afternoon, my phone had 37 missed calls. Most were from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably reporters or financial advisors who'd somehow gotten wind of the inheritance. But 3 were from Victoria. I deleted them without listening to the voicemails. One was from Christopher. That one I did listen to. Melissa, it's Christopher. I wanted to... Look, I know Victoria's probably harassing you. Ignore her. My mother made her choice, and despite what Victoria thinks, I'm not contesting it. But I need to ask you something. Can we meet for coffee? Just you and me. Tomorrow, if possible. I think we need to talk. His voice was calm, measured. Nothing like Victoria's barely contained hysteria. Nathan was sitting on our couch, his laptop open to financial planning websites. Christopher called me too, he said. I want to meet with both of us. What did you tell him? That I'd talk to you first. Nathan closed his laptop. Mel, we need to make some decisions, real ones. Starting with whether you're keeping this inheritance. Eleanor asked me to take 30 days. I know what she asked. But practically speaking, you need to start making moves now. You need lawyers, financial advisors, someone to manage the properties. You can't just let $42 million sit in limbo. He was right, but the thought of it all overwhelmed me. I don't know how to be a person with $42 million. Nobody does until they are. Nathan stood pacing our tiny living room. Look, I've been thinking. My inheritance is enough for us to pay off our debts, buy a house, set up college funds if we have kids. It's life-changing money. But your inheritance? That's dynasty money. That's never work again money. That's change the world if you want money. It feels wrong. Why? Nathan stopped pacing. Because you didn't earn it? Wealthy people leave money to their kids all the time, and those kids didn't earn it either. Because Victoria thinks she deserved it more? Victoria's opinion doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what my mother wanted. And she wanted you to have it. I pulled Eleanor's letter from my purse, reading her words again. She said I should leave you if I need to. Nathan flinched like I'd slapped him. Do you? Need to? The question hung between us, heavy and unavoidable. I don't know, I admitted. Your mother saw things clearly. She saw Victoria's cruelty, and she saw your silence. I know. Nathan sat down heavily. I've been thinking about that. About all the times I should have spoken up and didn't. About how I let my brother's wife treat you like garbage because it was easier than causing family drama. Why didn't you defend me? The question I'd been holding for 4 years finally escaped. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Because I was a coward. Because I grew up in that world, and speaking up against people like Victoria meant rocking the boat. Meant making things uncomfortable. I told myself you were strong enough to handle it, that her words didn't really hurt you. But the truth is, I just didn't want to deal with the fallout. At least he was being honest. I can't change the past, Nathan continued. But I'm telling you right now, no one will ever treat you that way again. Not Victoria. Not anyone. I should have protected you and I didn't. That's on me. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Christopher, again. This time I answered. Hello? Melissa. Thank you for picking up. Can we meet? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? There's a coffee shop in Hartford halfway between us. I'll text you the address. Christopher, I don't think... Please. I'm not trying to contest the will. I just need to talk to you. About my mother. About what happens next. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. Something in his voice made me agree. Fine, 9 a.m. Thank you. Come alone if possible. This conversation is between you and me. He hung up before I could ask what he meant by that. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. I left Nathan at home and drove to Hartford, my stomach churning with anxiety. The coffee shop Christopher had chosen was upscale but quiet, the kind of place where business deals got made over espresso. Christopher was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He looked exhausted, his usually impeccable appearance slightly rumpled. There was no sign of Victoria. "Thank you for coming," he said as I slid into the booth across from him. "I wasn't sure you would." "What is this about, Christopher?" He ordered us both coffee before answering. I wanted to apologize. For Victoria. For myself. For the way you've been treated. I hadn't expected that. Okay. My mother's letter was brutal, Christopher continued. But she wasn't wrong. I watched Victoria tear you apart at every family gathering. I knew what she was doing. And I said nothing because Victoria's behavior reflected well on me, in a twisted way. Made me look successful, powerful, like I'd married someone who fit our world. That's an ugly thing to admit, I said. It's an ugly truth. Christopher took a sip of his coffee. When Thornton read that will, something became very clear to me. My mother spent her last months on Earth making a statement. Not just about money, about values, about who deserves what and why. She barely knew me. She knew enough. Christopher leaned back. My mother was the most observant person I've ever known. She didn't need long conversations. She watched. She listened. She understood people better than they understood themselves. The barista brought our drinks. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to hold on to. "I'm not here to convince you to give the money back," Christopher said, "or to split it differently. What I want is to understand what you're going to do with it. Because it matters. Why does it matter to you? Because it was my mother's legacy. Her last act. And despite what you might think, I loved her. I respected her. If she trusted you with her fortune, then maybe I should too." It was the most human Christopher had ever seemed to me. The hedge fund manager facade had cracked, revealing someone who was grieving and confused. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. "I'm a dental office manager from Toledo. I don't know how to manage properties or investments or any of this." "Then get help. Hire the best people. My mother wouldn't have left you this money if she didn't think you could handle it." Christopher pulled out a business card. "This is my personal financial advisor. He's discreet, brilliant, and honest. If you want to talk to him, mention my name." I took the card, surprised. "Why are you helping me?" "Because my mother wanted you to succeed. And maybe because I want to prove I'm not completely the failure she thought I was." Christopher stood. "One more thing. Victoria's been talking to lawyers. Not to contest the will, she knows that's pointless. But she's looking into whether she can claim you manipulated my mother somehow. It won't work, but she's going to make noise. Of course she is. Don't engage with her. Don't respond to her calls or messages. Let the lawyers handle everything." Christopher headed for the door, then paused. "My mother was right about you, Melissa. I don't know why it took her dying for me to see it, but she was right. Don't waste this gift." He left before I could respond. I sat alone in that coffee shop for another hour, drinking cold coffee and staring at Eleanor's words on my phone screen. I'd photographed the letter, unable to let it go. Don't let anyone make you feel small ever again. For the first time since Friday, I felt something shift inside me. Not certainty exactly, but possibility. Eleanor hadn't just given me money. She'd given me permission to become someone different. Someone who didn't shrink. Someone who didn't accept cruelty as the price of belonging. I pulled out my phone and called Richard Thornton. "I'm ready to start," I told him. "Whatever needs to happen. Let's begin." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of meetings, paperwork, and decisions that made my head spin. Richard Thornton introduced me to a team of professionals, estate attorneys, tax specialists, financial advisors. I met with Christopher's recommended advisor, Marcus Webb, who turned out to be a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who treated the fortune with respect but not reverence. "Money is a tool," Marcus told me during our first meeting. "Nothing more, nothing less. The question is, what do you want to build with it?" I didn't have an answer yet, so we focused on the practical things first. The Greenwich house needed to be secured and maintained. Eleanor's investment portfolio needed oversight. The commercial properties, 2 in Boston, 1 in Philadelphia, 1 in Chicago, required property managers and maintenance. There were tax implications, legal structures to establish, insurance policies to update. Every morning I woke up in our cramped Toledo apartment and drove to meetings in Hartford or New York, wearing the same 3 professional outfits I owned, pretending I knew what I was doing. Every evening I came home exhausted, my brain overloaded with financial terminology I was learning on the fly. Nathan threw himself into managing his own inheritance, meeting with his own advisors, looking at properties in better neighborhoods. We were polite to each other, careful, like roommates who weren't sure if they were about to break up. The question Eleanor had posed hung between us, unspoken. Was our marriage worth saving? I didn't have an answer to that either. On day 23 of my 30-day consideration period, I finally went to see Eleanor's house. Our house, technically. I'd been avoiding it, but Marcus insisted I needed to understand what I owned. The Greenwich estate sat on 4 acres of pristine Connecticut landscape. Stone walls, mature trees, gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. The house itself was a colonial revival, elegant, classic, understated wealth. The property manager, an efficient woman named Helen, met me at the front gate. "Mrs. Ashford, welcome. I've been maintaining the property since Mrs. Eleanor's passing. Everything is exactly as she left it." Walking through that house felt like walking through Eleanor's mind. Every room was carefully curated, beautiful but not ostentatious, comfortable but not casual. Books everywhere, art that told stories rather than screamed about its value. In Eleanor's study, I found more letters. She'd left them in her desk with my name on the envelopes, dated for specific milestones. "Open when you move into this house. Open when you're doubting yourself. Open when Victoria tries to destroy you." I opened the last one immediately. "Dear Melissa," it began. "If you're reading this, Victoria has made her move. She's probably trying to paint you as a manipulator, a gold digger, or worse. Let me be clear. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I documented everything. Richard has files that will destroy any narrative she tries to construct. But more importantly, don't let her poison your inheritance with doubt. You deserved this before she attacked you, and you deserve it after. Her opinion has never mattered. Don't give it power now." I sat in Eleanor's chair, my chair, and cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of being truly seen by someone. Eleanor had anticipated everything. Protected me even in death. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You stole what was mine. Everyone will know what you really are. Victoria." Finally making her move. Within an hour, she'd posted a lengthy statement on social media. I didn't read it, but Nathan called immediately to tell me about it. "She's claiming you manipulated Mom when she was vulnerable, that you isolated her from the family, that you're a con artist who targeted a dying woman." Nathan's voice was tight with anger. "She's got mutual friends sharing it. It's spreading." "Let it spread," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Eleanor prepared for this. You're not going to respond?" "No, I'm going to live my life." That's the best response. After I hung up, I called Marcus Webb. "I'm ready to make some decisions." "I'm listening." "First, I want to establish a charitable foundation. Something focused on helping women in difficult situations. Women leaving abusive relationships, single mothers trying to go back to school, anyone who needs a hand up, not a handout. I want to fund it properly. $10 million to start," I could hear Marcus writing. "Excellent. What else?" "I want to pay off the student loan debt for every employee at Dr. Patterson's dental practice, including Dr. Patterson himself if he has any. They've been good to me. I want to be good to them. Consider it done. And I want to set up college funds for my nieces and nephews. All of them. Christopher's future kids, Nathan's siblings' kids if he has any. I don't want the next generation punished because their parents were complicated." That's generous, considering how you've been treated. "It's not about them. It's about the kids." I took a breath. "Also, I want to buy a house. Nothing like this estate. Something normal. Maybe outside Toledo, a bit of land, space to breathe." "Can you help with that?" "Absolutely." "What about this property?" I looked around Eleanor's study. Keep it maintained for now. I'm not ready to sell it, but I'm not ready to live in it either. It feels like a museum to someone I barely knew but who changed my life. Over the next week, things moved quickly. The foundation was established. I named it the Eleanor Ashford Foundation for Women's Independence. The student loans were paid off. Dr. Patterson cried when I told him, and my co-workers threw me an impromptu party. I found a house on 40 acres outside Columbus, Ohio, far enough from Toledo for a fresh start. Close enough that Nathan could maintain his own properties if he chose to. It was modern but warm. With huge windows and space for gardens, I had no idea how to plant but wanted to learn. And then I made the hardest decision. I asked Nathan to come to dinner at a nice restaurant. Not too fancy, but nicer than we'd ever been able to afford before. Neutral territory for a conversation that would change everything. He arrived nervous, wearing a suit I'd never seen before. Probably new, purchased with his inheritance money. "So," he said after we ordered. "You've been busy." "I have. I wanted to talk to you about what happens next. With us." Nathan set down his wine glass carefully. "I've been thinking about that too." "Your mother told me I should leave you if I needed to," I said quietly. "And for the past month I've been trying to figure out if I need to." "And?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know." That's the honest answer. We've been married for 6 years. 4 of those years, you let your family treat me like I was worthless. You never defended me, never stood up for me. Your silence hurts almost as much as Victoria's cruelty." Nathan nodded slowly. "I know, there's no excuse for it. I was weak. I prioritized my own comfort over your dignity. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it, but I am genuinely sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, Nathan. I need to know if you've actually changed, or if you're just sorry because your mother called you out." "That's fair." He leaned forward. "Here's what I know. The man who stayed silent while Victoria humiliated you is someone I'm ashamed of. And I don't want to be him anymore. I've spent this month doing a lot of therapy. Real therapy. Not just talking to friends. Trying to understand why I was such a coward. And what did you learn? That I've spent my whole life avoiding conflict. I learned early on that keeping the peace was more important than doing what's right. That I valued being liked over being good." Nathan's eyes were red. "But mostly I learned that I took you for granted. I had this amazing woman who loved me despite having nothing, and I treated that love like it was infinite. Like you'd always be there no matter what." "I almost wasn't," I said softly. "I was planning to leave you. Before Eleanor died. I'd started saving money, looking at apartments I could afford on my own. I was just waiting for the right moment." Nathan absorbed this like a physical blow. "I didn't know. You weren't paying attention." We sat in silence while the waiter brought our food. Neither of us touched it. "So what do you want to do?" Nathan finally asked. "I want a separation. Not a divorce, not yet. But I need space to figure out who I am now, who I want to be. And I can't do that while we're still living the same life we were living before." "A trial separation?" "Yes. I'll move to the new house in Columbus. You can stay in Toledo or buy something with your inheritance. We'll check in regularly. Go to couples therapy if you're willing. See if there's something worth saving. And if there's not," Nathan's voice cracked, "then we'll end things as amicably as possible. You'll be financially secure. I'll be fine. We'll both move on." "I don't want to lose you," Nathan said desperately. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Then prove it. Not with words. With actions. Show me you're the man I thought I married. Show me you can stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." "I will. I promise I will." "We'll see," I said gently. "Time will tell." We finished dinner making careful small talk about logistics. Moving dates, therapy schedules, how to tell his family. It was civil, sad, but necessary. As we left the restaurant, Nathan hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mel. I'm going to prove I deserve you." "I hope so," I whispered back. "I really hope so." But as I drove home alone that night, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't small. It wasn't shrinking, wasn't accepting less than I deserved. Eleanor had given me more than money. She'd given me permission to demand better, and I was finally ready to take it. Moving into my new house in Columbus should have been exciting. Instead, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The movers arrived on a Tuesday morning with the few belongings I'd taken from the Toledo apartment: books, clothes, some kitchen items Nathan and I had agreed were mine. Everything fits in one small truck. The house itself came fully furnished. Marcus had hired an interior designer who'd somehow created spaces that felt both elegant and comfortable. I walked through rooms that echoed with emptiness, trying to imagine myself living here. A chef's kitchen I didn't know how to use. A library with built-in shelves waiting for books. A primary suite larger than my old entire apartment. My phone rang. Marcus Webb. Melissa, we have a situation. Victoria Ashford has filed a civil lawsuit against you. My stomach dropped. For what? Elder abuse, undue influence, and tortious interference. She's claiming you manipulated Eleanor into changing her will while she was mentally incapacitated. But Eleanor had psychiatric evaluations. Documentation, I know. Richard Thornton is already preparing our response. The lawsuit won't succeed, but it's going to be ugly. She's given interviews to 3 news outlets. The story's breaking this afternoon. I sank onto my new couch. What kind of interviews? The kind where she cries on camera and talks about how a gold digger manipulated her dying mother-in-law. She's positioned herself as the grieving family member trying to protect Eleanor's legacy. Marcus paused. Melissa, this is going to get worse before it gets better. The media loves this kind of story. Wealthy family, contested fortune, accusations of manipulation. By that evening, my name was everywhere. Local news, online tabloids, even a segment on a national evening show. Victoria had done her homework, presenting herself as polished and heartbroken, showing old photos of her caring for Eleanor, reading selected excerpts from sympathy cards she'd received. And me? I became the mysterious dental office worker who inherited millions from a woman she barely knew. My phone exploded with calls from reporters, old acquaintances suddenly wanting to catch up, and people I'd never met asking for money. I turned it off and sat in my empty house, feeling very alone. Nathan texted from Toledo. I saw the news. Are you okay? Do you need me to come there? I'm fine, I lied. Let the lawyers handle it, but I wasn't fine. Reading the comments online was like watching people dissect a stranger. Half believed Victoria's story, that I was a scheming manipulator who'd taken advantage of a vulnerable old woman. The other half defended me, but their defenses felt hollow because they didn't actually know me either. Christopher called the next morning. Melissa, I'm issuing a statement. Supporting you. Contradicting Victoria's narrative. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. My mother wouldn't want this. And despite what Victoria claims, I was there. I saw how Mom treated you. I saw the will. I know the truth. His voice hardened. Victoria's made this personal. She's using my mother's death to wage a public relations war. That's unforgivable. His statement went live that afternoon. My mother, Eleanor Ashford, was of sound mind when she made her final decisions. She underwent extensive psychological evaluation. She consulted multiple attorneys. Her choices were deliberate and well-reasoned. Any claims of manipulation are not only false, but dishonor her memory and intelligence. I fully support the distribution of her estate as she intended. Victoria responded within hours on social media. My own husband has been turned against me by this woman. This is exactly the kind of manipulation I've been describing. She's destroying our family. The narrative was spiraling out of control. Richard Thornton filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, attaching every piece of documentation Eleanor had created: psychiatric evaluations, attorney consultations, personal journals where she'd detailed her reasoning. It was comprehensive and damning to Victoria's case. But facts didn't matter in the court of public opinion. A viral TikTok video analyzed the situation, with a creator breathlessly declaring, "This is giving Gone Girl energy. What did Melissa really do to this old woman?" A think piece in an online magazine asked, "When does kindness become manipulation?" The Melissa Ashford case. Even people defending me framed it wrong. Maybe she was kind to the old lady and deserved some money. But 42 million? That seems excessive. I stopped reading. Stopped watching. Stopped caring what strangers thought. Instead, I focused on the foundation. The Eleanor Ashford Foundation for Women's Independence officially launched 3 weeks after I moved to Columbus. We'd secured an office space, hired a small staff, and opened applications for our first grant cycle. The applications broke my heart and filled me with purpose. Women fleeing domestic violence who needed first and last month's rent. Single mothers trying to afford childcare while attending community college. Women who'd been out of the workforce for years and needed training for new careers. Every application was someone who'd been made small by circumstances, by people, by systems designed to keep them down. Every application was me, 5 years ago. If I hadn't had even the small safety net of Nathan's income, I threw myself into work, reviewed applications, met with social workers, partnered with organizations already doing this work. The foundation gave me purpose beyond the circus of Victoria's lawsuit. Then, 6 weeks after Victoria filed her suit, she made a critical mistake. She gave an interview to a prominent podcast, one known for sympathetic coverage of wronged women. For an hour, Victoria wept and raged, painting herself as the devoted daughter-in-law who'd sacrificed everything. But the podcaster asked one question Victoria wasn't prepared for. "Can you describe some specific moments where you cared for Eleanor during her illness?" Victoria launched into detailed descriptions, feeding Eleanor by hand, helping her bathe, staying up through difficult nights, administering medications. The problem? Eleanor had been in professional hospice care with round-the-clock nursing. She'd specifically requested no family provide intimate care. She documented this in writing. Marcus called me the next day, barely containing his excitement. She lied. Probably lied. About care she never provided. We have hospice records, nurse logs, everything. She destroyed her own credibility. The podcaster issued a correction. News outlets began investigating Victoria's other claims. And one journalist pulled security footage from Eleanor's residence showing Victoria's actual visits. Brief, often only 20 minutes, far less frequent than she'd claimed. The narrative shifted overnight. Headlines changed from gold digger inherits fortune to bitter daughter-in-law fabricates care to contest will. Victoria's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice 2 weeks later. The judge's ruling was scathing. The plaintiff has presented no credible evidence of undue influence and has demonstrably lied about material facts in this case. This action appears motivated by disappointment over inheritance rather than legitimate legal grievance. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Nathan drove to Columbus the day after the dismissal. We'd been doing weekly therapy sessions via video call, but he'd asked to see me in person. We met at a small cafe downtown. He looked different, lighter somehow despite the stress. "I'm proud of you," he said. "The way you handled all of this." The foundation. Victoria's attacks, everything. You never stooped to her level. Eleanor taught me that. In her letter, she said character matters more than cruelty. She was right. Nathan hesitated. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About what you said at dinner. My heart rate picked up. And I want to fight for this marriage. But not because of money or inheritance or any of that. Because losing you made me realize what I had. You're the best person I know, Mel. You always have been. And I was too comfortable, too cowardly to appreciate it. Nathan, let me finish. I know I need to earn your trust back. I know sorry isn't enough, so I'm showing you, not telling you. I started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, helping with their legal aid program. It's not much, but it's something. And I confronted Victoria. You what? After the lawsuit was dismissed, I called her. Told her exactly what I thought of her behavior. Told her she'd dishonored my mother's memory. Told her that if she ever came near you again, I'd make sure everyone knew exactly who she really was. Nathan's jaw was set. She threatened to turn Christopher against me. I told her Christopher already knew the truth, and so did I. I studied my husband's face. He'd changed. Or maybe he'd finally become who he should have been all along. That must have been hard, I said softly. It was terrifying, but it was also the first time in years I felt like myself, like someone my mother would have been proud of. He reached across the table but didn't take my hand, respecting my space. I know we're separated. I know you need time, but I want you to know I'm becoming someone worthy of you, whether you take me back or not. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of something like hope. Keep going to therapy, I said. Keep volunteering. Keep being this version of yourself, and we'll see what happens. That's all I'm asking for. A chance. After Nathan left, I walked through downtown Columbus, a city I was slowly learning to call home. I passed people who had no idea who I was, who didn't care about inheritance drama or viral lawsuits. My phone buzzed. A text from the foundation director. First grant recipient just sent a video message. You need to see this. I opened the video. A young woman, maybe 25, standing in what looked like a new apartment. Mrs. Ashford, you don't know me, but your foundation helped me leave an abusive marriage. This is my first night in my own place. My kids are safe. I have a job interview tomorrow. Thank you for giving me a chance to start over. She was crying. I was crying. This was why Eleanor had done it. Not to punish Victoria, not even to reward me, but to create ripples of change, to help people who needed it most. I texted back to the director. How many more applications do we have? 700 and counting. Let's figure out how to help as many as we can. Because that was what I was going to do with Eleanor's gift. Not hide from it. Don't feel guilty about it. But use it to make sure no one else has to feel as small as I once did. 1 year after Eleanor's death, I stood in the ballroom of a hotel in downtown Columbus, watching 200 women celebrate their new beginnings. The Eleanor Ashford Foundation's first annual gala wasn't the kind of charity event Victoria would have recognized. No $5,000 tickets, no designer gowns, no champagne towers or silent auctions featuring luxury vacations. Instead, it was a celebration for our grant recipients, women who'd used our funding to escape violence, finish their education, start businesses, rebuild their lives. They wore their best outfits from Target and Kohl's. They brought their children, who ran around the dance floor with the kind of joy that comes from finally feeling safe. They told their stories without shame, supporting each other with the fierce solidarity of survivors. This was what $42 million looked like when you spent it on people instead of performance. Melissa? I turned to find Nathan standing nearby, holding 2 glasses of punch. You did this. All of this. We'd been living separately for 11 months, but recently something had shifted. Nathan had kept his promises. Therapy every week. Volunteer work at the shelter. Learning to speak up, even when it was uncomfortable. Especially when it was uncomfortable. 2 months ago, when a colleague at his new job made a sexist joke, Nathan had called it out immediately. When his brother Christopher suggested hosting a family event and excluding me to keep the peace with Victoria, Nathan had refused to attend unless I was welcomed. Small moments. But they added up. We did this, I corrected him. You've been helping with the legal aid program. That's different. You're the heart of this. Nathan glanced around the ballroom. My mother would have loved this. Not the fancy gala version Victoria would have thrown. This, real people getting real help. He was right. Eleanor would have preferred this. A woman approached us, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Ashford, I'm Rebecca Martinez. Your foundation gave me a grant 8 months ago. I remember your application, I said warmly. You were going back to school for nursing. I just passed my licensing exam yesterday. I start at Cleveland Clinic next month. Rebecca grabbed my hands. I left my husband with 2 kids and $300 to my name. Everyone told me I'd never make it. Your foundation believed in me when no one else did. After Rebecca left, Nathan was quiet for a moment. That's what my mother saw in you. You know what it's like to be underestimated, to be told you're not enough. So you recognize it in others. Your mother was remarkable, I said softly. She saw everything so clearly. She saw you clearly. Nathan set down his glass. Mel, I know we agreed to take things slow, but I need to ask you something. Do you think there's a chance for us? Real chance? I looked at my husband, at the man he'd become over the past year. The silence that had once enabled cruelty had transformed into thoughtful listening. The cowardice had evolved into quiet courage. I think we're getting there, I admitted, but I'm not ready to move back in together yet. I need more time. I can wait, however long it takes. Nathan smiled sadly. I spent years taking you for granted. I can spend years earning you back. The gala ended near midnight. As I drove home to my house in Columbus, I passed the turnoff toward Toledo. A year ago, I would have taken that exit automatically, heading back to a cramped apartment and a life that felt too small for my spirit. Now, I kept driving toward spacious rooms and possibilities. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Christopher. Melissa. I hope it's not too late to call. It's fine. What's going on? I wanted to give you a heads up. Victoria and I are divorcing. Papers were filed this morning. I wasn't surprised. The past year had been brutal on their marriage. Victoria's public humiliation, Christopher's support of me, the revealed lies about Eleanor's care. How are you doing? I asked, honestly, relieved. I've been in therapy too, working through some things. Realizing I married someone who reflected what I thought success looked like, not someone I actually loved. Christopher paused. Victoria's blaming you for this too, by the way. Claims you destroyed our marriage along with everything else. Of course she does. The truth is, my marriage was hollow long before my mother died. I just didn't want to admit I'd chosen poorly. Mom's will forced me to look at things clearly, including my own complicity in Victoria's behavior. That takes courage to admit. It takes hitting rock bottom to admit, Christopher corrected. But I'm climbing back up. And part of that is making amends. I never apologized properly for those years of watching you get torn apart at family gatherings. I'm sorry, Melissa. Truly sorry. I appreciate that. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a while, looking at my house, at the life I'd built from Eleanor's unexpected gift. The foundation was thriving. I'd helped hundreds of women. I'd discovered I was good at this work, passionate about it in ways I'd never been passionate about scheduling dental appointments. But more than that, I'd discovered who I was without the weight of constant humiliation. Without making myself small to fit into spaces that didn't want me, Eleanor had seen that potential before I had. 3 months later, Nathan and I celebrated our 7th wedding anniversary at the same modest restaurant where I'd asked for a separation. 7 years, Nathan said, raising his glass. Technically, we've been separated for one of them, so maybe this is our 6-year anniversary. Let's count all of it. The good and the bad. I clinked my glass against his. It all brought us here. Here was a better place than we'd been. We'd moved back in together 2 weeks earlier, tentatively, with the understanding that if things didn't work, I had a home of my own to return to. That safety net changed everything. I wasn't staying because I had to. I was staying because I chose to. I have something for you, Nathan said, pulling out an envelope. It's not expensive, but it's important. Inside was a letter, written in Nathan's handwriting. Dear Mel, 7 years ago, I promised to love and honor you. I kept the love part, but I failed at honor. I let people dishonor you while I stayed silent. I prioritized my comfort over your dignity. I took your strength for granted. My mother saw what I was too cowardly to admit, that I was failing you. Her will wasn't just about money. It was about truth, about forcing all of us to look at who we really were. This year taught me that I don't want to be the man who stays silent. I want to be someone you can count on, someone who stands beside you, not behind you, someone worthy of the remarkable woman you've always been. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I promise I'll try. Every single day I love you. Not the version of you that stays small to keep the peace. The real you. The one who builds foundations and changes lives and refuses to shrink anymore. Thank you for giving me another chance. Nathan. I was crying before I finished reading. I wanted you to have it in writing, Nathan said. So if I ever forget again, you can remind me who I promised to be. I won't need to, I said, believing it. You're already there. 6 months after that, I received an unexpected email from Eleanor's estate attorney. Dear Mrs. Ashford, as executor of Eleanor Ashford's estate, I'm required to inform you of a final provision in her will that was time delayed. Eleanor left a video message to be delivered to you 18 months after her death, once you'd had time to settle into your inheritance. The video is attached to this email. Eleanor wanted you to hear her voice one last time. Sincerely, Richard Thornton. I waited until I was alone to watch it. The video showed Eleanor in her study, the same study where I'd found her letters. She looked frail but fierce, her eyes sharp despite her illness. Hello, Melissa. If you're watching this, you've made it through the storm. Victoria attacked you, didn't she? I knew she would. That's why I documented everything so thoroughly. I hope you kept the money. I hope you used it well, not to buy things but to build things. To help people. To become the woman I always knew you could be. I've been thinking about legacies. Most people think a legacy is what you leave behind. Buildings with your name, foundations, wealth transferred to children. But I think a legacy is who you become because of what you've experienced. You've experienced cruelty. You've experienced being underestimated. You've experienced struggle. And instead of letting those experiences make you bitter or small, you let them make you compassionate and strong. That's a legacy worth more than $42 million. I'm not sorry for what I did. I'm not sorry for choosing you over your blood family. Because you understood something my sons never had to learn. That character is built in difficulty, not comfort. Use my money to spread that understanding. Help other women discover their own strength. Show them that being made small doesn't mean staying small. And Melissa, thank you. Thank you for being kind to an old woman at family gatherings when you had nothing to gain. Thank you for crying quietly in my bathroom instead of making a scene. Thank you for absorbing Victoria's cruelty with grace. You didn't know I was watching, but I was. I saw everything. Live well, dear girl. Make waves, change lives, and never, ever make yourself small again. With love and respect, Eleanor. The video ended. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face, feeling Eleanor's presence like a hand on my shoulder. She'd been gone for 18 months, but her impact rippled outward still. Through the foundation, through the women we'd helped, through the person I'd become. 2 years after Eleanor's death, I stood at her grave for the first time since the funeral. The headstone was simple, elegant. Eleanor Margaret Ashford. Beloved mother. She saw clearly. I placed flowers on the grave, not expensive roses, but wildflowers I'd picked from my own garden. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me, for believing in me, for giving me permission to become more. The wind rustled through the trees, and I felt at peace. Eleanor hadn't just given me a fortune. She'd given me freedom. Freedom from small spaces and smaller expectations. Freedom to be kind without being weak. Freedom to demand respect instead of accepting scraps. Victoria had humiliated me for years, trying to prove I didn't belong. Eleanor had given me the ultimate validation, not just wealth, but trust. The trust that I would use her legacy to build something meaningful, and I had. The Eleanor Ashford Foundation had helped over 1,000 women in 2 years. We'd opened 3 satellite offices in other cities. We'd partnered with organizations nationwide. We'd changed lives. More importantly, I'd changed. I'd discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. Purpose I'd never imagined. A voice I'd been taught to silence. As I walked back to my car, I thought about Victoria. I'd heard through Christopher that she'd moved to California, trying to rebuild her reputation far from the scandal. I felt nothing toward her. Not anger. Not satisfied. Just indifference. She'd spent years trying to make me feel worthless. Eleanor had spent her last months proving my worth. In the end, Eleanor's opinion mattered. Victoria's never had. I drove home to Nathan to my work, to a life I'd built from ashes and unexpected grace, and I never felt small again. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.